Emotional and Psychological Abuse. Published by womenslaw.org. What are the effects of emotional and psychological abuse? What can I do if I am a victim of emotional and psychological abuse? Is emotional abuse the same as psychological abuse? There is no clear agreement among experts in the field whether there is a meaningful difference between emotional and psychological abuse. There is some research that suggests that there are slight differences between the two. Emotional abuse is believed to be broader, and so psychological abuse is often considered to be one form of emotional abuse. Also, psychological abuse involves the use of verbal and social tactics to control someone's way of thinking, such as gaslighting, which is not necessarily the same as other forms of emotional abuse. However, for the purposes of the following questions, women's law will group the terms together since the behaviors described by both concepts are similar enough that there isn't a real difference when considering legal remedies for victims of these behaviors. What is emotional and psychological abuse? Abuse comes in many different forms. Even when there is no physical violence, abusive language can be very damaging to you and your children. Emotional and psychological abuse include mostly non-physical behaviors that the abuser uses to control, isolate, or frighten you. Often, the abuser uses it to break down your self-esteem and self-worth in order to create a psychological dependency on him, her. Emotional and psychological abuse are hard forms of abuse to recognize because the abuse is spread throughout your everyday interactions. Unlike physical abuse, there are often no isolated incidents or clear physical evidence to reference. See the National Domestic Violence Hotline, What is Emotional Abuse page. What are the signs of emotional and psychological abuse? Emotional and psychological abuse may begin suddenly, or it may slowly start to enter into your relationship. Some abusers behave like a good partner in the beginning and start the abuse after the relationship is established. When this shift in behavior occurs, it can leave you feeling shocked, confused, and even embarrassed. However, abuse is never your fault, even if the abuser tells you it is, or if your family members or friends blame you for allowing the abuse. It is often difficult to decide whether or not certain behaviors are emotionally or psychologically abusive, especially if you grew up witnessing abuse. However, as with all other types of domestic violence, the behavior is intended to gain and keep power and control over you. Some signs that a partner is being emotionally and psychologically abusive include humiliating you in front of others, calling you insulting names, such as stupid, disgusting, or worthless, getting angry in a way that is frightening to you, threatening to hurt you, people you care about, or pets, the abuser threatening to harm him, herself when upset with you, saying things like, if I can't have you, then no one can, deciding things for you that you should decide, like what you wear or eat, acting jealous, including constantly accusing you of cheating, continually pretending to not understand what you are saying, making you feel stupid, or refusing to listen to your thoughts and opinions, questioning your memory of events or denying that an event happened the way you said it did, even when the abuser knows that you are right, changing the subject whenever you try to start conversations with the abuser and others, and questioning your thoughts in a way that makes you feel unworthy, and making your needs or feelings seem unimportant or less important than those of the abuser. See U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office on Women's Health, Emotional and Verbal Abuse page. What are some forms of emotional and psychological abuse? Emotional and psychological abuse can involve behaviors or acts towards you or towards others. Below, we discuss both. Acts towards others. Abuse of pets. Pets are commonly viewed as family members and treasured companions. The abuser may use the emotional and psychological connection you have with your pets to gain power and control over you by harming or threatening to harm your pet in any of the following ways. Harming your pet to get back at you for actions that you may have taken that show self-determination or independence. Harming your pet as punishment for something that you or your children did. Threatening or harming your pet in an attempt to coerce you into doing something, or forcing you or your children to harm or kill your pet or to watch the abuser do it. Threats to self-harm. When your partner regularly threatens self-harm when you don't do what the abuser wants you to do, or when you decide to leave the relationship, this is a form of emotional and psychological abuse. The abuser is using your love for him, her to manipulate and control you. When your partner makes these threats, Steps you can take to protect yourself include telling your partner you care about him, her, but sticking to your boundaries. In other words, not necessarily doing whatever the abuser tells you is necessary to do to prevent self-harm. Not taking responsibility for the abuser's actions if the abuser does decide to self-harm, and remembering that it is not your responsibility to make the abuser not self-harm. For example, the abuser may say, "If you really loved me, you'd stop me from killing myself," but this is part of the manipulation that often comes with emotional abuse. Acts towards you. Isolation. In an emotionally and psychologically abusive relationship, the abuser will do many things in an attempt to cut all of the emotional ties you have with other people so that the only one left is the one to the abuser. Some signs of this type of isolation include preventing or discouraging you from seeing family or friends and making you feel guilty when you do. Wanting to know what you're doing all the time and making you be in constant contact. Restricting access to transportation so you can't leave the home. Acting jealous of time spent with your family or friends, often to the point where you will choose not to see them anymore so you don't have to put up with the abuser's jealousy, and wanting you to ask for permission before doing something or spending time with other people. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of emotional and psychological abuse that tends to happen gradually in a relationship. The term gaslighting is used to describe a pattern of behavior in which the abuser intentionally denies that acts or events happened in the way that you know that they happened. An abuser will often twist your emotions, words, and experiences and use them against you, which causes you to question your reality, to doubt your own judgment and memory, and to make you feel that you are going crazy. Signs that you are experiencing gaslighting include feeling confused, crazy, and constantly second-guessing yourself. Constantly questioning if you are being too sensitive. Having trouble making simple decisions. Constantly apologizing to your partner. Frequently making excuses for your partner's behavior. Finding yourself withholding information from loved ones. Starting to lie to avoid the put-downs or reality twists. Feeling as though you can't do anything right, and wondering if you are a good enough partner. Ultimately, these behaviors are meant to control, isolate, or frighten you. And while they do not leave physical scars, they can leave long-lasting trauma. This information was adapted from Pets and Domestic Violence. See the National Domestic Violence Hotline, when your partner threatens suicide page. See the National Domestic Violence Hotline, what is emotional abuse page. See the National Domestic Violence Hotline, what is gaslighting page. See U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office on Women's Health, Emotional and Verbal Abuse page. What are the effects of emotional and psychological abuse? Emotional and psychological abuse can have severe short and long-term effects. This type of abuse can affect both your physical and your mental health. You may experience feelings of confusion, anxiety, shame, guilt, frequent crying, overcompliance, powerlessness, and more. You may stay in the relationship and try to bargain with the abuser or try to change the abuser's behavior, often placing blame on yourself, even though you are not at fault. If you're